All right, hey everybody, we're back. Another interview with special guest Vinh Giang. He is a communications expert, and we're going to dive into a lot of things that people can use, tactical takeaways to help amplify the best parts of who they are. Vin's line. I took a class from him, really helped out me as a speaker. He's also an entrepreneur and magician. But Vin, thanks for joining me. I want to jump in and go all the way back because I think that's so important to get an idea of the foundation of where you come from.
I was born in Australia, but my mum and dad are from Vietnam. They fled Vietnam in in the 1970s and were, I wasn't born yet. And when they fled, man, it was one of those situations where my dad had to learn how to be a fisherman so that he could patrol and see the patrol route of the Viet Cong so that they could work out what nights the Viet Cong don't patrol so then they could escape. So it was a crazy situation. They escaped and ran out of fuel, and then the oil rig had to save my family and take us to a refugee island. So their journey was just one of the most incredible stories ever. And
Yeah.
and not only that, after that they spent 2 years on a refugee island, and then finally Australia took us in, and that's where they had me. So I mean, this story is very common among Vietnamese refugees, but it's kind of that crazy journey to a whole new country, and then the hardships of the classical immigrant story of not knowing the language, starting from scratch, having nothing,
Mhm.
not much financial abundance. So that's kind of my family background, and then me growing up as a kid, super confusing childhood because I was an entrepreneur at heart and didn't really fit into the education system very well. So I moved schools 5 times. My parents hated me for that. But it was just the story is that I was more interested in selling my friends electronics and gaming accessories for double the price. I was more interested in that than learning anything. And that's why I had to move schools so many times because the teachers would find out and I'd get expelled. So yeah. I didn't have many friends growing up. David didn't have many friends.
Moving 5 times, I don't know if anybody could have a lot of friends. It's a lot. Thanks for sharing that story. I know there's so much more to that. One of the things I teach a lot of the students I have is never forgetting where you come from. And I feel like you have a good grasp of that. A lot of immigrants, I feel like, have a different strength almost because they have that part of their foundation. There's a power in that, there's a lot of strength in that. And I sense that in you, and I sense that in a lot of people that have overcame a lot and have been through an amazing journey. Just let you know that I see that through you. Do you feel that also? Do you feel like you draw a strength in that, knowing those are your roots?
Yeah, definitely. There's a power in having gone through adversity.
Mm-hmm.
I feel that comfort is nice, but comfort also leads to monotony sometimes or complacency. The drive that sometimes people say certain entrepreneurs have or certain people have, I find that drive comes from scarcity.
Mm-hmm.
Often when we don't have enough of something, it pushes us, and that's where a lot of my drive came from early on in my entrepreneurial journey. Because when we were young, man, I watched my mum borrow money to put me through school and then have people abuse her verbally. And, I experienced all of that. And those moments when I see so much pain and suffering in my family because of the lack of financial abundance, that pushed me so much as an entrepreneur and gave me such a strong drive that even today where we are more comfortable, I feel that those early experiences still are embedded in my head, sometimes negatively though, because sometimes now it's still pushing me to work so hard when I probably shouldn't. But I think those early adversities, man, I mean, I don't wish it on people, but it's kind of important.
It
Otherwise,
is.
I've seen other generations that are born in a more comfortable state. There's less drive, there's less desire.
Mm-hmm.
there's less motivation. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you 100% on that. Adversity is a good thing. And you said something that a lot of peak performers, high achievers run into. It's like, oh my God, I'm here, but my rhythm and my drive tells me to keep going.
Yeah.
And that is one thing that's hard to do sometimes when you have that, is to take a step back and say, listen, I need to slow down,
Mm.
or I'm doing really well in this bucket, but there's too many sacrifices in this part of my life. And I've run into that a few times.
The biggest thing that freaked me out, David, was that when the pandemic happened, like for you, I remember we chatted beforehand and you were saying that it was like a pause for you.
Mhm.
When the pause happened for me, I freaked out because I had a professional identity. I teach communication skills, I do keynotes, I run workshops, etc. But I didn't have a personal identity.
Right.
Outside of my work, I had no identity. And
Mhm.
professionally, one of my driving forces was, of course, I wanted to have impact. I wanted to teach people, inspire people, but very deep within me, because of all this financial scarcity that I experienced when I was young, a huge driving force for me as an entrepreneur was to make money. And
Mhm.
everything I did had a financial orientated goal around it. And then that's the only value I had, was wealth creation. And then when it came to living in my personal life, I had no identity. So it freaked me out because I was forced to sit with myself, sometimes by myself. And then I realized, okay, I don't have any hobbies as an individual. I don't have anything that I do as an individual. So then I had to go through the process of exploring myself, which was scary, man, because when you're 34 and you're in this space and you go, how do I not have a life?
Mhm.
I have time, but I don't know what to do with it. And I know you went through this with during your sporting career as well.
I
But
did.
it's the thing that helped was allowing yourself to find the things you like to do, but for me, have no financial reward attached to them. And that's just a long way of saying giving yourself permission to play.
Yeah.
So I started to play again. And that's when I found archery. That's when I found camping. That's when I found cooking. There were so many different things that I found that if I have free time now, man, I use it up very fast.
Yeah. Same here. My grandmother always used to say, if you're ever bored, you're a boring person. And I became,
Brilliant.
yeah, I became very boring person, because just like you, we were talking about before this, I was in Arizona, and my professionally, everything was there. But now that I had free time, the exact same thing. I was like, I have no identity outside of my profession. And so
Mm,
I did just that. I started to explore, I started to play. And the thing that the pandemic, the pause did to me was do that again. It's like, okay, I've been through this before. I know what to do. I don't feel as freaked out as I did the first time. Like, oh my God, what am I going to do? The first time I remember I bought like a PlayStation, I bought Tomb Raider 2, and I bought like the series of Sopranos. I bought the entire series. And after a while, I was like, man, this is, I'd watch 3 in a row, and it's like, man, this is just not it. This is not fulfilling for me at all. So that went
mm.
quick. I started getting to reading all these other things. And my grandmother was right. I turned into, when I had free time, I was a
I'm
boring
writing that down. If you're ever
person.
bored, you're a boring person.
Yeah. But man, my free time, I have so many things. I got to pick what to do. But the pause brought me back to that a little bit.
Yeah.
So thanks for sharing that. I think that's something, as high performers, you lose a little bit of the rhythm as you're going through the traveling and the fast pace speaking and teaching people how to use their instrument. Where was the kind of moment where you said, this is what I want to do? I'm drawn to this.
The speaking happened accidentally.
Mhm.
It was in 2000 and about 11, 2012. I was still a professional magician at that point. So I would be performing on weekends. I'd do close up roving magic for networking functions, etc. And I was running my online business at the time as well, Encyclopedia of Magic. And then
Mhm.
I remember there was this one gentleman that we won an award back in 2013. and it was Young Entrepreneur of the Year in Australia. And then when we won that award, I had to give an acceptance speech to accept the award.
Mm,
And I remember doing that acceptance speech, and oh man, they want me to speak for 10 minutes. What am I going to talk about for 10 minutes?
mhm.
And now you can't shut me up. But then at the time, once I did that 10-minute bit, there was a man in the audience. His name was David Griggs.
Good
And
name.
then, yeah, it's kind of cool. And then he came up and he said to me, I want you to speak at an event for me. Just do it. Just accept it. This is an omen.
Mhm,
And just speak there for me. And I was like, who is this guy? He wants me to speak for 30 minutes. This is insane. I don't know what to speak about for 30 minutes. Anyway, I did it. And when I did it, right after I finished, David had flown in a speaking agent to watch me speak. And they both sat down and they said, you've got a talent. And immediately that day, that speaking agent booked me a keynote.
wow.
And this, yeah, and then he said, "Look, they're going to pay you about $1,500." And then I said, "Look, how many hours is that? Do I have to speak for like 5 hours, 10 hours?" And he goes, "No, it's 45 minutes." And I went, "Wait, what? You pay me, huh?" So it was kind of crazy. I couldn't believe that speakers get paid that much. I thought it was quite fraudulent, to be honest, when I started.
Mhm.
And that's how I started my speaking career. And I'll tell you too, that first keynote I did, I ended up refunding them the money because when I walked off stage with that first gig, I remember the CEO of the company was a building association in Sydney. As I walked off stage and I thought I did a brilliant job, literally the CEO asked me, Vin, have you done this before? And I went, oh man, what? I thought that was brilliant. And I refunded them the money because I felt so terrible. And I came home to my wife and said, I'm never doing this again. One of the very few reasons I think I'm still a speaker is because after 3 days of hating myself, the
Mhm.
CEO sent me an email with it was almost a 3-page email on how I can improve as a speaker,
Oh, wow.
and that was very encouraging. And he sent me the email because he said I did expect you to give me the refund, so I thought I owed you this. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's how I got into speaking, man. And then after that, I fell in love with it. It
Yeah.
gave me so much more fulfillment than magic. Magic was only entertainment. I
Mhm.
wanted to not only entertain people, I wanted to educate and inspire and entertain. I wanted to do all those three things.
Yeah, I think that's where we align. Your main thing is teaching people how to use their voice, their instrument. And what was the birth kind of that? Because I think a lot of people are missing that. And I think that's very, very important to pretty
Yeah.
much everything in life when you're talking about your voice and your personality.
I love that you're going for the origin stories because it's making me really think back. And this teaching part of Vin was revealed by another person. So, as a keynote speaker, I've been lucky enough to travel and work with all these different companies around the world. One company in particular called PMI, which is Project Management Institute. And it was
Mhm.
founded by a gentleman named Jim Schneider. And this is now one of the largest institutes in the world. It has over 500,000 members. It's an unbelievable association. And Jim Schneider, one of the founders who lives in Philadelphia, I remember I spoke at the PMI event in Australia, in Malaysia, in Bali, all over the US, even in
Mhm.
Thailand. So I've worked with this association extensively. So I got to know the founder quite well. And he goes, come have dinner with me in Philadelphia, Vin. I said, okay, yeah, I really like you. I mean, you've been so amazing to me. So I flew to Philadelphia and we went for a drive and we had dinner. And during that dinner conversation, he said this to me. He said, you're not a keynote speaker. I was like, well, why would you book me then? I mean, you booked me 10 times. And he goes, no, you're more than this, Vin. You're a teacher. And I kind of asked him, I said, what do you mean by that? And he goes, Vin, you're a teacher at heart, and you're meant for more than just a 1 hour momentary motivation. You're more than that.
Mhm.
And I really took what he said to heart that night. He said, I'm a teacher. And then the thing he said last to me is he just goes, all you have to think of in is what do you want to teach? And that brought me to a pivotal moment in my life where I knew he was right because the moment he said it, I got so excited.
Yeah.
And I find that in life, when you ask most people who are teachers and they teach a certain craft or they teach a certain area of expertise, and you ask them, why do they teach it? Most of the times, the reason why people teach what they teach is because the very thing that they teach has changed their life in some shape or form or another.
Mhm.
And I chose communication skills because there was a Vin before he learned communication skills, and there was a Vin after. I used to be invisible in my life. Growing up, I was invisible to the girls. I was invisible to friendship groups, having
Mhm.
changed schools so much. I was always invisible. I was invisible to the teachers. They wouldn't even remember my name. I was always invisible, and man, there's a pain associated to being invisible that unless you are invisible, you won't understand. And I felt that for 15, 16, 18 years of my life. I was always invisible, man.
Wow.
And that's why my vision statement that I have personally, on my dashboard is helping the invisible become visible, helping the invisible shine.
I
And
like
and that's kind of my purpose with me being a teacher. I want to help people shine.
it'd be pretty universal that at some point in everybody's life they could relate to some kind of form of being invisible. Early in my career, when I first went to college, I think you guys call it university, I
Yeah, we
was a
do.
nobody, to the point where players, coaches, people would walk right by me like I wasn't even there. And
Mm,
I remember thinking like, man, am I a ghost? Like, can people even see me? Does anybody even know I'm here? Because people
mm.
wouldn't even look, like not even their peripheral, wouldn't even look in my direction sometimes. So I'm like, man, I feel like a
Wow.
freaking ghost. That became part of my driver. I'm going to get out of this ghost phase and come alive somehow and make people notice that I'm here. I can only imagine what it had been like for that many years, for changing the school so many times. But I love the vision statement, making the invisible visible. It goes along with my main message, which is crafting a vision. I have a teaching on this, a 5-step teaching. It's making the invisible visible in your life. So I love that. Thanks for sharing those two stories. A lot of wisdom in there, and also shows how you were able to find people that noticed something in you and you were able to
Yeah.
capitalize on that. Moving now on to continuing education, a lot of the best teachers are always the best students.
Mm.
And after going through your course, I know that you're a great teacher. And I know because of that, you're a great student. So I wanted you to just talk a little bit about what continuing education means to you. Because one of my mentors we talked about before this, he always used to tell me, and still lives by this, that education is never out for the pros. Meaning you're always learning something new. There's always something that you could be getting better at. And that's one of the secrets of world-class competitors when you want to make it big in sports, is you have to be getting better at something every single day. So talk to me about your philosophy in education and some of the things you do.
Well, first of all, thank you for the lovely compliments. You're very kind, and you're dropping some wonderful wisdom bombs too. I love it. That for champions, you got to keep learning, and I think that's so true.
Hmm.
My journey to remain a student is I have a strategy that I use. Now, I'm not sure if some people will agree with this, but this is what I like doing.
No,
For
Vin, give him
example,
the
I teach.
strategy, give him the secret sauce, Vin.
Yeah, well, yeah, sure. This is what I love doing. As I want to improve my knowledge to be a better teacher in the realm of communication, instead of just relying on myself, I seek out experts. So, for example, when I wanted to learn more about the human voice and learn more about projection, when I run my 3-day in person class, gradually I want to be able to teach people how to do that as well. So, what I do is I look for an opera singer, or I look for someone who's a vocal coach, and I look for someone who's done it for the last 20 years.
Hmm.
And this is my pitch to them. I reach out to them and I say, hey, look, I really respect what you do. I've watched your content online. Would you be open to sitting down with me for an 8-hour day to distill for me the most valuable lessons you've learned on how you can help people behaviorally change the way they communicate? Now, I will pay you a month of your time for that one day. And generally they kind of go, whoa, this is crazy. And what happens is though, they spend weeks preparing for that one day.
Hmm.
And they literally sit down and think about the entire 20-year career that they've just had. And when they come to that 8-hour day with me, they have distilled some of the most incredible lessons that you've ever come across.
Mhm.
And to me, that resembles the downloading that happens in the Matrix. You know, when they want to learn Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, they just put the Matrix to their phone
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then download it.
yeah,
To me, I'm able to download at a very high level very quickly incredibly distilled lessons. Whereas, sure, I can go do a PhD as well, but to me, I love the pragmatic lessons that are distilled after years of application.
right.
And for me to be able to do that at this point in my career, that's one of the biggest luxuries that I love, is that you can, of course, reward people for their time, effort, and expertise, but at the same time, you get to download information at such an incredible speed and level. And of
Mm,
course, look, some people don't agree with this because they say, "Oh, but you're not getting the years of experience that has led to that piece of knowledge." I'm okay with that because if I need that, I will bring them into my workshop for an hour to access that 25 years of knowledge or 20 years of knowledge that I actually need.
mhm.
Does that make sense?
It
So if I
does.
need that in my teachings, I'll bring them in. And I do bring them in. I bring in humor experts and I bring in vocal experts. But then there are other pragmatic things that I can teach that doesn't necessarily need the 25 years behind it. That's one of my, I guess, if you would call it a hack. I don't think it is because I've now realized that sure, you can do 8 hours, but I generally end up doing 3 days with them because some of the things I'm like, wait, I don't even understand what you mean by that. And it takes time to unpack.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. Who are some of your mentors now?
Right now, I am getting coaching from a silver medalist in the realm of archery. His name's Jake Kaminsky.
Mhm.
So he reviews my videos once a month, and I think currently he's out of Florida, but I was able to court his attention, and I've been getting into archery. I find that it's powerful to be a student in an area where you absolutely suck as well.
Mhm. Yes.
It's so important because when you're starting from rock bottom again, you remember what it's like starting out as a student from ground zero. So then that reminds you to adjust the way you teach to cater for those who are just starting out. Because as I got better at teaching, I started to teach people who are from, say, a 6 out of 10 through to, a 10 out of 10. I
Right.
forgot about all of my students who were starting at zero. So that was really powerful. And the most inspiring thing about finding people who are masters of their craft is that it reminds you the power of mastery in teaching because Jake watched one of my videos and he gave me advice, three things. He told me to
Mhm.
fix three things. It completely changed my game in archery. Whereas I went to a local club here in South Australia, Adelaide, and I went to that club for 3 weeks to get coaching there and my
Mhm.
archery game didn't even change. So it reminded me as well how important it is to find quality teachers, quality coaches. People, do your due diligence because right now that there's so many teachers and so many people out there in the world. You just got to make sure you do your due diligence because when you find an exceptional teacher, far out,
Yeah.
night and day, shave years
What
off your
are
learning.
It does shave years. I know because you've told me how persistent you could be to find some of these teachers. So, if you could give someone kind of a tactical takeaway now, if they wanted to go
Sure.
out and find a teacher, what would you kind of recommend? Because I know you can get, uh, I don't know if extreme's the right word. It's something I respect, really. Because a lot of people, they DM somebody once or you send them an email, and after one or two, they just quit. So, could you
Yeah.
talk a little bit about your style?
Yeah, look, I think you can get really creative with what you do. So one of the techniques that I still use today, I just used this strategy 2 weeks ago. There's an
Mhm.
influential kind of investor here in South Australia that I really want to meet. So what I do is now you do you buy whatever thing you feel is good, but I buy shoes. Have I told you this one before, David?
No, no, no.
Okay, this is a cool little strategy then. A new one for you too. So I buy shoes and I like shoes. I like nice shoes. It's one of my guilty pleasures. And I find out who it is I want to reach out to, and I take a guess at their shoe size, but I give them the receipt so they can change it if they need to. So what I do is I buy a really nice pair of shoes. So for this person, I found a really nice pair of dress shoes from Louis Vuitton. I bought the pair of shoes, and then once I received the box, I remove one shoe and I send them just one shoe, but then I scrunch up a letter and I put it into that shoe. So when they receive the box, they go, what the hell? They're going to open it because it's a nice pair of shoes. So they open it and there's one pair of shoes. And again, when you get them curious and dopamine is rushing through their brains, they're like, what the hell is this? And then they're looking around for some kind of clue as to who sent this to them. And then they find the letter scrunched up, which is again a release of wonderful chemicals because it's like a puzzle. And then they open up the letter and the letter's handwritten. The letter says, blah, blah, blah. Hi, my name is Vin. Now that I've got one foot in the door and I've got your attention, right? Give me the opportunity to have a 15-minute conversation with you and I'll bring the other shoe. And if this is not your shoe size, there's a receipt in the end. And even if you don't want to meet me, I have a bit of fun with them. But at the end, I just say, look, it's no pressure. It's your choice. If you don't want to meet me, that's fine. Just send me an email. I'll send you the other shoe. There's no use for the other shoe for me anyway. Mm-hmm. And that gets people's attention very quickly.
Yeah.
And I generally get the meeting. It's one of those things where once you do that, guess what they're going to do? They're going to Google you, right? And the moment they Google me, they'll find my website, they'll find my videos. So if you've got a good online blueprint, if your online blueprint is strong and you come up with a really strong creative tactic to get people's attention, you'll get yeses the majority of the time. And I think a lot of the times what happens is people don't put enough effort into the approach. Let's just use a simple example of how guys sometimes try to pick up girls with pickup lines, right? I think pickup lines are very low effort. And when you put in more effort, you'll get a higher conversion rate, whether it's you dating or you trying to court a mentor. Mm-hmm. I believe sending an email, I believe a DM is not high enough effort. I don't believe. If I was going to reach out to someone in a DM, I'd create a really high production video just for that person. Yeah. I'd get a videographer out for a day and would create the most creative, we'd think about how to make that person laugh. We would incorporate humor. And I've done this before too. And then when they play that video, they think to themselves, oh my God, how long did this person spend making this video? You'll get a reply. Yeah. So high effort approach equates to a high level of conversion. Low levels of effort equal low levels of conversion.
A lot of wisdom in there, down to the handwritten note. I like that. Did you think of the shoe thing, or did you hear that from somebody?
I learned that from a executive producer named Brian Grazer. I spoke at a conference and I got talking with him backstage and learned a lot from him and built kind of a bit of a relationship with him, and he taught me that technique.
Brilliant. Top 2 books.
Number 1, the Almanac of Naval Ravikant. Got to read that. That is my Bible now. I've read that 4 times this year, and I bought 50 copies, and I've given them to all of my friends and people that I really love. So please, you must read this too, David, and to your listeners as well. So the Almanac of Naval Ravikant. The second one, this is very personal for me, I guess, in my own life. But I'd say the second one would be The 4 Agreements. That is an amazing book. So you check out The 4 Agreements, a phenomenal book. Yeah. 4 simple lessons, man, that have allowed me to find more peace in my life. I would say those 2 books, can't go wrong.
Last couple questions. Daily or nightly routines that, and it doesn't even have to be a full routine, daily or nightly things that you kind of added into your routine that you feel like keep you really sharp.
First thing I do when I get up is I have a vitamin routine. So my wife's a pharmacist, so she's very health conscious. So I take a lot of vitamins. Sometimes I feel like an experiment. But I take a lot of vitamins. It does make me feel good. I've taken it now for a few years now, and I know what it's like when I don't and when I do take them. So I say get on top of your vitamin game, understand what deficiencies you may have, understand that and supplement. So that's the first thing I do. Then I love a nice long black, and then I will journal for about 30 to 45 minutes. And I journal to atmospheric music. So I love listening to kind of orchestral music and whatever you do you, but I journal to that. And that to me is a brilliant way for me to start my day because I write all my worries down. After I kind of do that mental dump, that emotional dump, I write the things that are on my mind. Then I do a big to-do list for the day. And that just keeps me sharp, that keeps me aligned, and that keeps me effective. And then when I feel anxious, just jump on the Peloton. When I feel negative emotions, jump on the Peloton. That's
Yeah.
my well-being tactic. Anytime I feel stressed, anxious, angry, upset, anything, I just exercise and it goes away.
You shared this in one of your teachings. A lot of people struggle with if they are in a business where they have to go on stage or perform, the moments leading up to being on stage. So right before. So what's kind of your technique now, that your distilled wisdom that you could share with people to do right before they go on stage?
Look, I think the first thing, if right before you go on stage, before you go on stage, make sure you prepare well. If you rehearse well, then you're going to perform well. If you don't
Right.
rehearse well, then there's not much you can do leading up to it that's going to make you any better. So again, the huge chunk of it is the rehearsal process. Make sure you've rehearsed it well. Learn the rehearsal process. However, if you haven't done that, the final thing you can do, this is last resort, breathe. There's a great technique called Wim Hof. Check out the Wim Hof guided bubble breath. That's what I do. So I engage in the breathing technique, and you can look this up and you'll find it. And paired with that, I listen again to orchestral war music. That's what I listen to. I'd like to get myself really intense and jazzed up. So while I'm doing that breathing technique, I'm listening to orchestral war music. And that's how I get myself just completely in the zone. And
Yeah.
again, each person's different. But for me, I've got these incredible earphones where it makes me feel like I'm in a different world. So I can't hear the audience on the other side. I can't hear the AV team. All I hear is this intense music, and I'm breathing, oxygenating my body. And that gets me into this peak zone
Yeah.
where I'm ready. And psychologically, what I'm doing is I'm thinking about the audience. I'm thinking that I know today that I can share lessons. I know that if I deliver this well, if I use this instrument of mine well, if I stay focused enough, I can change at least one person's life today. But if I don't get into that mode, then I'm going to miss out on being able to genuinely changing somebody's life.
Yeah.
And when I get myself into that state, I'm not thinking about myself. I'm not thinking about, what if I don't sound good, or what if I'm, like, again, when we become so self-conscious, we don't serve others well. So I just fully think about the people that I can potentially help. And it's about them. It's not about me. It's about them.
Yeah.
Those three things get me into just this prime. I get really into that primed state, and that's how I can deliver the best.
Interview series is called Hunting Greatness. I always like to ask this question: what does greatness mean to you?
Greatness to me is when I'm happy. Greatness to be me used to be when I make lots of money, when I progress really far in my career. But for me, greatness has shifted its meaning now. Greatness is when I'm present and I'm happy and I'm content. So greatness to me now has completely changed its meaning.
Mm.
Happiness, being present, and being content.
Very good. Now to wrap this thing up, I always like, you have a lot of good training out there, so I would like you to share with the listeners where they could learn more, some of the things they should check out on your end.
Well, look, when we can again, I can't wait to run my stage workshop program. That's a 3-day event that I run where I teach voice, body language, storytelling, vocal mastery, all the good stuff. However, currently I do have a Stage Academy, which is an online course. So if you find me on social media, just look me up. It's Ask Vin, AskVINH. Once you find me on social media, you'll find links to everything that I do. So thanks for letting me share that, David.
Oh, you're welcome. Highly recommend to all the people listening out there. Any famous last words before we end the interview?
Sure. Let's leave one that I got on the front of my journal. And the front quote I have on there is by a psychologist. And he says, rather a mind opened by wonder than one that is closed by negative beliefs.
Awesome. And we can let that marinate and wrap with that. Vin, thanks so much for being the guest. Thanks so much for everything you shared today. And thanks for all the teaching that you're putting out in the world. Had a great time with you here, and hope to continue following your journey, everything you're up to. Cool stuff. Everybody, please check Vin out. And that's a wrap for Hunting Greatness. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, David.